Well, since most people don't have the verse, I'll just chant it. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. There's a little.
It's Tulsi water.
Yeah, there's a little manjari bud in there. One time I had a really nice glass of ahimsa milk, and a lot of cream on the top. It was Gitanagri milk for someone on the East Coast, and I was so excited. I saw a big fat manjari, hidden in the cream, and I took a big sip, and there was something not quite right about the manjari, and it was a big fly. but it looked just like a manjari, kind of truck.
But I saw the black dot, so I was worried that you might not realize it's Tulsi.
Giant. This is 3-5-30. Aham tadvadikurvarnan mano vaikarikadabhut vaikarikaschaye deva artabhivyanjanam yata. I suppose we could chant and repeat word for words, right? Mm-hmm. Aham tadvad, from the principle of false ego. Vikurvarna, by transformation. Manaha, the mind. Vaikarika, by interaction with the mode of goodness. Abhut, generated. Vaikarika, by interaction with goodness. Cha, also. Ye, all these. Deva, demigods. Artha, the phenomenon. Abhivyanjanam, physical knowledge. Yataha, source. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Prabhupada. The false ego is transformed into mind by interaction with the mode of goodness. All the demigods who control the phenomenal world are also products of the same principle, namely the interaction of false ego and the mode of goodness. Purport. False ego interacting with the different modes of material nature is the source of all materials in the phenomenal world. Om Jnana Timiranthisya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Well, there you have it, the material world summed up. False ego. I looked back at the last couple verses. We're getting some nice descriptions of this cloud covering Ekapalvibhuti, this 1/4, to try to give it some sort of spatial understanding, although you can't really quantify the spiritual planets in a place where space and time have no relative material meaning. You can't really quantify how much space is being covered by false ego, this cloud of Mahatattva. But in any case, it's the foundation, it's the fundamental principle of material existence, is false ego transformed through the various modes, manifesting in different ways. And we see here the mind and the demigods are put on not the same platform, but put in the same category of creation. Mode of goodness transformed with false ego transformed with the mode of goodness becomes the mind, and similarly the demigods are created. Vikurvarnat. by transformation. Third case and fifth case Sanskrit, one is instrumental, the other is, what's the word? When it's from something? Anyway, I forgot the English word for it. But,
Derivative?
what is it?
Derivative?
Derivative? No.
Origin?
No, anyway, there's a grammatical term for it. I'll find it later. But these are fifth case, but they operate on the same principle of instrumental, by transformation, by interaction. Vikurva, not, Vaikari, kat. There's at ending, Krishna, from Krishna. So from these different transformations, we get the mind, manaha, devaha, the demigods. My father once mentioned to me what a position of power it is to be Indra. Sometimes we scoff at Indra or Brahma. We say, "Oh, what a fool, coming down here, messing around with other people's wives, throwing thunderbolts at the Vrindavan Vasis. How could Indra be so foolish? How could he be so deluded?" But if we think about all the things that run through our minds on a daily basis, if your mind were put on a projection screen for everyone to see, how embarrassed we'd be. So if we're taking this literally, the false ego transformed with the mode of goodness is creating these demigods, how powerful they are, how subtle, that their desires become manifested so readily. All Indra has to do is, think of something, and it's that same quality of coming into being. Anyway, that's how my father explained it to me. He said that, Indra, if he just wills something to be, if he's just imagining it, it can take place. He's so powerful. Brahma, creating from nothing. He's creating, using the ingredients from the lotus flower. It said, sprouting from the navel of Garudaputta Kashaya Vishnu. But in any case, this transformation it's a very subtle transformation. The principle of false ego combined with the mode of goodness. It's not not your classic pottery class where you take some clay and thread the wire through it and throw it in the oven and out comes a pot. We have a much more subtle process of mixing happening here that's maybe not within our scope of complete understanding. Sometimes I get frustrated when I read the creative impetus in the second canto. We've already gone through that, but just how from this comes that, the interaction of this comes that, and sometimes I'm just looking at it wondering how exactly does that take place? And then I think, how in Christian theology they sort of simplify it. Hey, God took 6 days, he made everything. Took rest on the 7th. And I can see how one would want to just simplify it. But for those who are interested in the detailed method of creation, there's quite fascinating analysis and descriptions. So as far as I'm concerned, how exactly the principle of false ego, which is such a wonderful word, aham tattva. Aham means I. The tattva of identity, of self-identity, in this case, false self-identity, this aham tattva. What a wonderful word, aham tattva. I really liked that when I read it. Ego, self-centered, egoistic, this aham tattva, center of the world. When we walk out and perform our daily activities, when we're inconvenienced, rarely is it the other person that comes into mind. Sometimes even if someone has something awful happen to them, a car crash on the H1, you're thinking, wow, how inconvenienced I am. Imagine the poor person who's being carted off to the ER having the worst day of their life. Never mind that, I'm 5 minutes late to work. So it's very, this aham tattva manifests in this world as atmendriya pritivancha tarevale kam, as kama, as lust. when the desire is to satisfy one's own senses. Krishnendriya pritivancha tare vale tare premanam. To satisfy Krishna's senses is prem. And the great devotees see Krishna in the hearts of everyone. Pandita Samadarshina, they have equal vision for all living entities, and therefore that compassion expands. It's no longer aham tattva, it's jagat tattva. It's realization of Krishna's presence in the whole world, and therefore that supreme mercy is manifested by their desire to share not sense gratification, but transcendental knowledge. I think I mentioned this in last class, but I love this point so much. The Sanatana Goswami and the touchstone pastime. It's just so sweet that this touchstone is sitting in a pile of rubbish. It wasn't Sanatana Goswami, the description I heard that I liked so much was, I always kind of heard the story as Sanatana Goswami said, here, take the touchstone if that's what you want. But someone explained that he doesn't offer it. The devotee will never offer material benediction. And he said, what this devotee had mentioned in their class, said that Sanatana Goswami said, oh, that touchstone? Yeah, it's in the trash. You can rummage through the trash if you like. He didn't offer it, in other words. It was refuse. And so then the guy's wondering, hey, well, what do you have that's sweeter than this? You can't be telling me that this is your best thing in your house if it's in the rubbish. And Sanatana Goswami says, sure, I'll tell you. But my caveat is you chuck that into the Ganga first, Ganges. Don't let it tempt you further. Go forth and sin no more. Sort of, as long as you're tethered by that sense gratification, you'll quickly want to turn back to it. When devotional service becomes difficult, sometimes if we have material facilities to turn back to, then we might resort to them. We had one brahmachari in San Diego, very nice boy, super dedicated, sincere. His grandma passed away, and he got $10,000. Next day, gone. It was like instant. Hey, where's Bhakta so-and-so? Oh, he's renting some place, a couple blocks down, and you'll see him tanning out on PB. So it's kind of it's an amazing thing, Sanatana Goswami tells us, okay, this chanting of the holy name is the greatest thing we have. Oh, okay, wow, you get some preliminary taste. But then each day he's looking back at his touchstone. He's like, well, I'm having a little difficulty with my rounds today. Maybe I can just enjoy a little more. So Sanatana Goswami, to eliminate that possibility, chuck it into the Ganges first. First surrender. Then Adau Shraddha. It begins with a little bit of faith, and then association. A man is known by his association. Tata sadhu sangha. So by sadhu sangha, by that association with the great souls, then we can move from aham tattva to awareness of others to this greater platform. Such an amazing thing, the qualities of the demigods. Demigods are naturally in the mode of goodness. And this, it's kind of interesting. The further west you go, the more absorbed in sense gratification it tends to be. Hawaii being about as far west as you can go in America. Jayadvaita Swami was telling me that in the early days, in the 60s and 70s, the New York devotees would look at the California devotees and be like, ugh. They're real sense gratifiers, Flowers in the hair dancing around San Francisco, as opposed to the, staunch, those who are in New York are aware of the difficulties of life, heavy winter. San Francisco is pretty cold too. But anyway, the further west you go, the greater the sense gratification opportunities are. The reason I mentioned that was because you have these devotees in the West who are being given the opportunity to become Brahmanas. to become more than Brahmanas. A Vaishnava means more than a Brahmana. And Prabhupada's initiating these Western animals, Dvipadapashu, two-legged animals, who are so absorbed in sense gratification. He's bringing them from 0 to 100 so fast. And it's amazing, just the transformation. Everyone, Swamiji, show us a miracle. You know, turn water into wine, produce this, produce that, manifest something, levitate. If you want to levitate, you can join the Maharshi crew and bounce on a fluffy bed in lotus position. Prabhupada's miracle, he said, was, look, they were addicted to sense gratification. They've given it up. It's a miracle. It's actually a miracle. When you have someone who has a taste for param drishva nivartante, a taste for devotional life, then give up the lesser taste. It's a miracle. And some of the devotees accelerated more quickly than others. What comes to mind is His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Within 1 year, less 6 months, first, second, sannyas, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, I believe it was Tamal Krishna Maharaj, said to Prabhupada, oh, Prabhupada, I think it's a little too soon to give him sannyas. He may fall down. Prabhupada said of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, if he falls down, he will fall down into the mode of goodness. When you think of a fall down, when you think of a bloop, it means, you know, really messing up. This person's going back into the material world, absorbing himself in passion and ignorance, taking some intoxicant. No, if he falls down, he'll fall down into the mode of goodness. So, this mode of goodness, interacted with false ego, is the quality of the demigods. This is, there's wonderful, wonderful Vaishnavas in this community. The false ego is transformed into mind by interaction with the mode of goodness. All the demigods who control the phenomenal world are also products of the same principle, namely the interaction of false ego and the mode of goodness. Taijasanindriyanyeva jnana karma mayanicha. We have a half verse, 3.5.31. Taijasani. So now we have, this is transformation. Of course, we're familiar with the word teja, fire, passion. Taijasani, the mode of passion. Indriyani, the senses. Eva, certainly. Jnana, knowledge, philosophical speculations. Karma, fruit of activities. Mayani, predominating. Cha, also. The senses are certainly products of the mode of passion and false ego. And therefore, philosophical speculative knowledge and fruit of activities are predominantly products of the mode of passion. Fruit of activities and philosophical speculative knowledge, products of the mode of passion. Purport. The chief function of the false ego is godlessness. When a person forgets his constitutional position as an eternally subordinate part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and wants to be happy independently, he functions mainly in two ways. He first attempts to act fruitively for personal gain or sense gratification, and after attempting such fruitive activities for a considerable time, when he is frustrated, he becomes a philosophical speculator and thinks himself to be on the same level as God. This false idea of becoming one with the Lord is the last snare of the illusory energy, which traps a living entity into the bondage of forgetfulness under the spell of false ego. The best means of liberation from the clutches of false ego is to give up the habit of philosophical speculation regarding the absolute truth. One should know definitely that the absolute truth is never realized by the philosophical speculations of the imperfect, egoistic person. The absolute truth, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is realized by hearing about him in all submission and love from a bona fide authority who is a representative of the 12 great authorities mentioned in the Srimad Bhagawatam. By such an attempt only can one conquer the illusory energy of the Lord, although for others she is unsurpassable, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Daivi Hesha Guramaya Mama Maya Duratyaya Mameva Ye Prapadyante Maya Metam Taranti Taranti Trayate Mantra, that which delivers the mind. Daivi Hesha Guramaya, this divine energy of mine is insurpassable, very difficult to cross. Maya. So when the false ego, when the Mahatattva mixes with the mode of passion, then we get the senses. And these senses are dragging us in different directions. The eyes want to see something, the ears want to hear something. And the first instruction for a brahmachari, for a student, brahmachari gurukule, to reside in the shelter of guru, vasan, or literally the house of guru, vasan danto, to control the senses, gurur hitam, and to live for the welfare of the spiritual master, to live for his service. Kshayaya jagato hita. The demonic nature is ahita, to cause destruction in this world. It's the quality of ignorance. Their senses take control, and their purpose is simply to cause mischief, simply to cause problems for others. Aham tattva, with a desire for self-aggrandizement. Brahmachari gurukule vasandanto gurur hitam. For the devotee, it's just the opposite. He lives for the welfare of the spiritual master. And at the time of initiation, there are 4 things that the devotee vows to not do. And there's only one thing they vow to do. On the positive side, we have such a simple prescription. 16 rounds of the holy name, at least in our tradition. And by this chanting, then the senses can be brought under control. Of course, there's so many more prescriptions, more dues. Read Srimad Bhagawatam, associate with the devotees. But ultimately, it boils down to anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya varjana, accepting things that are favorable for devotional service. And that which is unfavorable are the lower modes in which fruitive activities and speculative knowledge are predominant. The best means of liberation from the clutches of false ego is to give up the habit of philosophical speculation regarding the absolute truth. We have a close friend, but because he sometimes associates with the devotees, I won't mention his name, but he's quite a wacky character. He's always speculating on the absolute truth. Every time I see him, he's in the tree industry. He's someone I work for sometimes. Nice guy, but kind of out there. And he's always got some far out description like, hey, I've been listening to this podcast, and there's, what do you think of like alternate dimensions in which, some of the living beings have 4 arms and these different things, and some of your Vedic conceptions could come from this concept of some crossover between another dimension and ours, sort of, influencing this Brahma Shiva principle. I'm just sitting there just thinking like, where do I even begin with this guy? What are you talking about? Just this, once you start down that path, philosophical speculation, it's endless. You can make up anything. I was in school, and Phillips Exeter Academy is supposed to be some of the most intelligent students in America. And this one girl was telling me, well, I think that there are sort of these supreme monsters who control. I said, where are you getting this? She said, well, I'm just kind of coming up with it, I said, what? Well, why are you in school? Why don't you just kind of come up with geometry, I kind of feel like a triangle would be better suited with 5 sides, Yeah, there is such a thing. There's another shape. It's got another name, too. When we want to actually learn something, then we have to submit ourselves. Submission and love. The absolute truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is realized by hearing about him in all submission and love from a bona fide authority, who is a representative of the 12 great authorities. The 12 great authorities. It's interesting we get these different lists, you know. The 9 processes of devotional service, each one of them has sort of an acharya, an exemplar, and then there are the 12 great authorities. And one time we were hearing a class, Jadvaita Maharaj was giving his regular Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes through the Tawako Zoom channel, and someone had pointed out that between the 12 great authorities and the 9 exemplars of devotional service, there's a couple that are the same. And then the devotee said, well, why aren't the other exemplars of devotional service, why aren't they also authorities? And Maharaj said, anyway, these are lists. There are so many more amazing Vaishnavas than just the 12 great authorities, but this is a list given in Srimad Bhagawatam by Yamaraj. I believe it's Yamaraj speaking. He gives this list. He includes himself in the list. But the difference is that when Yamaraj includes himself in a list of 12 great authorities, it's not aham tattva. It's not with the desire to say, hey, I'm on that top tier. It's with a desire to say, hey, I'm interested in giving Krishna consciousness. I'm interested in sharing. Vidura, all of this is coming from conversations between Maitreya and Vidura. What an exalted soul. Selfless act of love to inquire about Krishna, to speak about Krishna, to share Krishna, to remember Krishna, to serve Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Last night, Maruti, my son, put on quite a performance for us. Do you remember the line? What was the refrain?
The wave refrain?
Yeah, what was it? Do you remember? Anyway, he put on this whole wonderful dance show, and the refrain of the song he was singing was about a wave coming and splashing up on his face, you know, and that was the basis of the story. And I couldn't help but think of being sort of dunked in the waves of sort of a Markandeya Rishi sort of situation, in which you're just being submerged again and again in this ocean of samsara. At Sandy Beach, it's kind of like that. If you've ever, my father was telling me a story. He described it so graphically, it stuck in my head from when I was like 9. But he was saying this real rhino of a guy, just powerfully built. He was, maybe waist deep in sandies, and the water was pulling so hard that he was, struggling so hard against it, but it was just dragging him in. He just was completely helpless to go against it. Jaya Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Shri Prabhupada. And then these causeless, merciful, tumbling, white water. It feels, when we chant Shikshashtaka, we get this, whether you handled me roughly with your embrace. So it's sort of Varuna giving this guy an opportunity to go into shore. But he's resisting. He's resisting against the water pulling him into the ocean, and then he gets scared by the water coming at him the other direction, and so he braces against that. Instead, if you just take the white water in, you'll easily stand up on the shore. But he doesn't know that, so he's, ducking under the white water coming in, and then getting sucked into the ocean by the water coming back. And this guy's just getting dragged into this ocean, just hit from both sides, And this is sort of our position here. We're being hit from both sides, from within by desire to enjoy the senses, and from without by the daivi hesha gunamai, this intense material energy dragging us down. But that same intense material energy that's dragging you down is also that same white water that can push you right to the shores, right to a platform of being able to stand. Gopi Pranadam Prabhu once said that Maya has 2 functions. One is to hold the living entity down, and the other is to facilitate the entry of Srimad Bhagavatam and the pure devotees. So that same energy transformed into service to the Lord instead of a desire to enjoy it separately from the Lord, transforming lust into love, is what brings us easily to the shore. Anyway, somehow my father and someone else finally managed to help this guy shove him into the shore. But it's quite interesting. You go in to enjoy. You think, oh, everyone's having fun out there. Why don't I also have some fun? But you have no idea what you're getting into. Sometimes it's like that, you know. Anyway, we'll desist from further sandy analysis. It's my yukta vairagi, you know. I like the beach, so I'm making it into devotional service. It's very easy to lose track in the ocean. It's sort of you go in thinking I'll just spend half an hour, and then the waves are so good. 5 hours later, the only thing that pulls you out is that you need to eat. But for the devotee, it's, you know, what pulls them out is that they need to chant. They can't live without being in the association of devotees. Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chittate Kuriya Aika Arana Kuri Homane Asha. Gopi Pranadam Prabhu said, and this is another one, I quote it a lot, but it's just something that stuck with me, that within the heart, within the mind, there's, if you fill it up with material desires, if you fill it up with material samskaras, then there's not so much room for Guru Mukha Padma Vakya, for the words emanating from the lotus mouth of Guru. But for the devotee who wants to fill his mind, who has no other asha, no other aspiration than to serve the words of Sri Guru, then it's disturbing to him to have anything that's taking up that prime real estate. There's such a limited amount, especially us as living, we're so limited in our ability to remember anything, in our ability to do anything. We're so small. And so with that precious small ability to remember Krishna, to think about Krishna, to serve the words of Guru, if you have other lesser matter floating in the heart and in the mind, then it's taking up that prime real estate that should be engaged in following the orders of the spiritual master. Who was it? It said, well, read the best books first or you won't have time to read them at all. One of those three named people, Henry David Thoreau, or one of them. Read the best books first, or you might not have time to read them at all. We have Srimad Bhagawatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavad Gita. We have so many wonderful books, or as Maharaj was telling us originally, you know, what did Prabhupada say? You just need 3 books: TLC, Bhagavatam, and Krishna book. No, what was it?
Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Nectar of Devotion and Teachings of Lord Chaitanya.
Nectar of Devotion and Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. This is before Prabhupada put out all of Chaitanya Charitamrita. He said, you just need these 4 books. Nectar of Devotion, which is summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. TLC, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. These are the best books. Read them first, otherwise you may not have time to read them at all. There are so many mundane literatures. Waste our time. Fun to read, but waste our time. I know I got absorbed in the worlds of Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, enticing, amazing stories, but they're just Ekamsena, just a fraction of Krishna's splendor. You get a little glimpse at the wonders of the spiritual world. People pretending to some platform of greatness, but so small. It's this mixing of the false ego with the modes of passion and ignorance that drive the senses to try to enjoy separately from Krishna some fruit of desire. Any comments, questions, discussions on Aham Tattva or mixing of false ego with various modes? Any realizations?
One tiny one. You were saying that the further you go west, the more sense enjoyment. Our westernmost point of the island is a death point, a jumping off of blind spirits.
Really?
The very westernmost point, there's this like lignum there, but that's where you die. So you can think you're enjoying, but that's where you're ending up.
Wow.
And there's so much, tourists come here to enjoy. They're always surprised when they get into trouble in the ocean, on hiking trails, and all the homelessness. It's like a Pinocchio land, If you're getting distracted thinking you're enjoying your senses, there's just all these pitfalls. So, that's what I was thinking.
I like that, Pinocchio land. Yeah. Yeah, you come here and just make an ass out of yourself. Or Narahari, I'm sure, has stories of couples coming here for their wonderful wedding, their moment, and then it rains.
The first thing they do is they get sunburned.
The first thing.
They want to get tan and be beautiful, but they end up like lobsters,
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but Prabhupada said that for one who wants material enjoyment, Hawaii is the best place to be. And for one who wants spiritual life, Hawaii is the best place to be. But for one who wants spiritual life but still has material hankerings, Hawaii is the worst place to be. Because there's so much.
Yeah, you're here with the touchstone. Sanatana Goswami said to throw it away first, but here you have it. You have access. So it's difficult. You always have that opportunity to turn to enjoyment. That's why one has to be so honest with themselves. It's sort of even when we make these vows, no gambling. No gambling, obviously, none of us are, going and cranking the slot machine. It's like such an easy thing to avoid. But to not waste one's time, to not whittle away the valuable opportunity this human life has afforded is a much more difficult thing. And so it's something that we have to be very introspective about. No one else can give you the diploma that, hey, you've really used your time. Abhyartha kalatvam. You haven't wasted any time today. It's something you have to really be introspective. His Holiness Bhakti Vishwambhu Maharaj gave sort of a nice layout that if you operate from Ekadasi to Ekadasi, it's sort of a good time frame. You have 2 weeks to sort of see how much service you've done and up it for the next 2 weeks. So Ekadasi is coming up on Monday, and I can honestly look back at my last 2 weeks, and it's mostly been a lot of work. I'm trying to pack in all my jobs and get everything situated for when my father arrives, so that time can be spent with him chanting shlokas, going to the beach, reading Bhagavatam, attending temple programs more, cleaning out the coconut trees here at the temple. So my last 2 weeks have been a little bit not the quality, devotional quality which I would like. But then I'm learning that even when I pack in all my different work scenarios, I always have to be honest. It's very easy for me to justify it. Anyone looking at it, oh yes, of course, he has a great reason to not have read as much as he should have, or not come to the temple as much as he should. I have all my bases covered from an external point of view. But if I'm honest with myself, then I can say, oh, I wasted 2 hours here. I watched YouTube here. I could have been reading. So all of this sense gratification in Hawaii, it's a very real thing. It's very difficult to overcome, especially with that the 4 defects. One of them being the cheating propensity. is that you wanna cheat everyone else, but you can't cheat Krishna. You wanna put on a facade of being very dedicated, but harboring desires for enjoyment. So it's difficult in Hawaii. One has to be extra careful. But like you said, or like Prabhupada said, it's also the place best to perform devotional service because the threefold miseries are a little bit less. At least the Adi Bhautic troubles are a little less. We don't have snakes and scorpions. Well, we have some scorpions, and we have one baby black blind snake. But yeah, we don't have intense weather. We don't have a lot of Adi Bhautic difficulties. Our Adhyatmic difficulties are also thus a little bit less. We don't get as many diseases or difficulties. But we still have to deal with the mind and other living beings. And I said Adi Bhautic, I meant Adi Daivic. Our Adi Daivic troubles in Hawaii are less. Adi Daivic would be the weather and the seasons. But Adi Bhautic, we still have to deal with Adi Bhautic and Adhyatmic troubles. One more time the verses. The false ego is transformed into mind by interaction with the mode of goodness. All the demigods who control the phenomenal world are also products of the same principle, namely the interaction of false ego and the mode of goodness. The senses are certainly products of the mode of passion and false ego, and therefore philosophical speculative knowledge and fruitive activities are predominantly products of the mode of passion. We could have a whole seminar on fruitive activities and philosophical speculative knowledge. But if no one else has any input, then we can move on. Oh,
You know how you were saying the economists said that there are like monsters that are, ruling the world or running the world?
Yeah.
Well, here's a relevant Prabhupada quotes. He says, this is going on. You can note this world is now managed by the Rakshasas. The Rakshasas, they don't mind what is happening. They are prepared to sacrifice everything for fulfilling their whimsical nonsense. So this is, Prabhupada speaking about the Rakshasas. They're understood to be accustomed to eating their own sons as snakes and many other animals sometimes too. So.
Yeah.
Monsters.
Yeah, if you want to get a detailed overview of their mission, I quoted one verse from it, Kshayaya Jagadohitam, that if you want to read more about them, just take a look at the 16th chapter of Gita, and one gets a very detailed look into the demonic consciousness, what drives a person who's of that mindset. Yeah, prepared to eat. Yeah, we have Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad. Of course, he wasn't trying to eat Prahlad, but when his own son was a hindrance, a stumbling block on his path of sense gratification, let me kill him. That's how quickly does the mind become perverted when it's Atma Tattva, when it's geared towards self. Thank you. Yeah. So our mission is Asatoma Sadgamaya, to move away from this impermanent, nasty world of egoistic sense gratification, and to move towards the eternal Sanatana Dharma occupation of serving Krishna and the association of like-minded souls. Such a beautiful. Actually, what Prabhupada has given us is inconceivable. When you see the quality of the 6 Goswamis, when you see the qualities of the pure devotees, what it is that we're aspiring to do, to serve Krishna eternally in the spiritual world, is what a lofty aspiration. And it's real. It's kind of wonderful. Forget Hawaii. We have Goloka. Srimad Bhagawatam ki jai.